beats scissors, scissors cuts paper, and paper covers rock. If you want to get into the more complicated version of this, there's something about a lizard poisoning Spock and Spock vaporizing rocks as well. But we're just going to focus on the nice, simple, original rock, paper, scissors analogy when it comes to gameplay and when it comes to game design. Hello there, Lorcana lovelies. Today I'm talking about archetypes. And what I mean about archetypes is I'm talking about deck archetypes and the big 3 deck archetypes that are out there and how they interact with each other in this nice rock, paper, scissors kind of wheel of gameplay, if you will. So, what are archetypes? Archetypes are the big general like deck building and deck play strategies that each deck will inevitably fit into. You might have to, some of them might have wiggle room or they might bleed into one of the others, but generally every deck can be considered either an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, or a control deck. I do have a fourth one that is a curveball that does not fit into my nice rock, paper, scissors analogy that I'm going to toss at you at the end. So just wait for that curveball. Or I guess skip ahead to my titles and you can see what it is. But either way, let's focus on rock, paper, scissors. So when we're going to talk about these rock, paper, scissors, why is it important for game design? First off, nobody wants to go into a room where everybody's playing control and you can be guaranteed to be playing the control mirror every single game. That's not fun. It's not fun to be able to walk into a room and to be able to just know that everybody's playing control. It's more fun to be able to sit down and have no idea what people are playing, or to have a feeling or a shot that you could be lucky enough to be paired against a great deck that you're great against. And not necessarily be able to predict every single game in the room, because who wants to play the control mirror every single match? That's where the unhealthy metas come from, when too much of the meta is one style of deck over another. Now, you're never going to get a nice, completely even rock, paper, scissors as far as all decks are concerned, but so long as there is a build out there for each one of these archetypes, there's always the thought that the aggro deck could be paired against the control deck and just completely obliterate them, or the control deck could just completely shut down the mid-range deck. And that's where we're going to go into today. We're going to talk about each deck archetype as far as rock, paper, scissors is concerned. Let's start with aggro. So what is an aggro deck? An aggro deck is exactly what its name sounds like, which is it's an aggressive deck. It wants to win quick. It wants to win early. It doesn't really care what its opponent's doing because it's going to make its opponent respond to it. It's going to push forward its game plan, and it's going to do things so quickly and effectively and devastatingly that whoever's on the other side of the table is going to have to use their resources to respond to that aggro deck. That is an aggro deck when it is played perfectly. So what are its strengths? Well, it's explosive, it's fast, it can win you the games or even the matches with like 20 minutes left to spare, which gives you plenty of time for snacks. I like that strategy myself. And they can be very difficult to deal with decks. You could be looking at your opponent and you could have 18 lore on board by the time it's turn 4, and they could have not even set up their game plan yet. Aggro decks are very strong decks when they work right. So that is its strengths. What are its weaknesses? Well, its weaknesses are they often don't work right. Problem with an aggro deck is it often loses to itself. And the reason it loses to itself is the hard decisions for an aggro deck start right at the beginning with what you mulligan. And the mulligans are so important because you need to be able to figure out what is worth keeping, what is worth throwing away, and what's worth risking getting something worse. You need a really, really tight early game play because by the time you hit like turn 4, you're top decking. It doesn't matter what's in your hand because nothing's in your hand. You're going to play whatever's off the top. And that's kind of the tough part about these decks is that if they go to that mid to late game stage, they often lose just because they fizzle out. They don't have the big staying power to be able to fight in that kind of mid to late game. What are some examples of aggro decks? Well, traditionally we got some aggro decks in the form of like the Amber Steel ones, the not Steel Song, the Amber Steel ones with like the Diggy Diggy holes and like the Daisies and Lilos and Docks. Those are really aggressive because you can see that most of the deck is in turn 1, 2, and 3, or ink 1, 2, and 3, I guess. And a lot of them quest for a lot more than their general ink value should let them quest for. The another one is like the Chernadogs, or the Chernadogs list. Great deck as well. It has a lot to do in the early game with like its Curse Merfolks and its Ladies. That one's nice because it does have some things to do in the late game, but you can see how it is focused in the early game as far as its aggression goes. The general curve for an aggro deck should not surprise you, where like it's got a lot of 1, 2, and 3 lore, ink characters. And then it really peters out to the point where like it's got really nothing that it's doing at the like 5, 6, 7 ink slot. It really wants to win in that early game, and you can tell that by the curve. So what does an aggro deck win to? Well, an aggro deck wins against control. And the reason for that is because it can go faster than control and make control spend its early game responding to it. To the point where like it might win before control even gets a chance to set up. And that is why it wins against control. It is just a fast style of deck, and control has a hard time dealing with it because they're a late game deck. What does it lose to? It loses to midrange. The reason it loses to midrange is because midrange can do the control stuff or the removal part of control earlier. A lot of its removal pieces come in a turn or two earlier than controls, perhaps a turn or two later than aggro's, but they're able to out-tempo aggro. They can take the kind of gas out of aggro by removing things with, say, things like Calhoun's or Strength of a Raging Fire, and their removal is just so efficiently costed specifically to deal with aggro decks. So that is kind of that. We're going to call aggro scissors. And so in the scissors analogy, aggro is able to take out control there, but it is able to, but it's beat by the rock of midrange. So let's go to midrange, which is our rock. So what is a midrange deck? Well, just like aggro wins in that early game, midrange wins in exactly what you would expect it to based on the name, the middle. Midrange deck is all about that mid game. It's got enough efficient early stuff to be able to do something in the early game, or potentially try to get its way underneath control in that early game, but it doesn't do it as well as aggro. It has answers to be able to answer a lot of the aggressive pieces from aggro in that mid-game section, and bigger characters that can either take them out and survive or be more effective in the mid-game than aggro, but it doesn't do it well enough to contend with control. Mid-range decks are very versatile. They can do a bunch of different things, and they are great for players who are looking for that versatility. The ones that can kind of sit there and figure out, do I need to be aggressive or do I need to be a little bit more controlling? The strengths of a mid-range deck is that it's kind of like that jack of all trades. It could do a little bit of everything, which really rewards the type of player that wants to be able to do a bit of everything and potentially respond to whatever their opponent's doing. The weakness of it is that it is the master of none. So it doesn't do aggro as well as aggro, and it doesn't do control as well as control. But it does have all of the options to be able to do either or in that middle game part. Who does it win against? Let's do examples. An example of a mid-range deck is your classic Steel Song. So the classic Steel Song has some of your characters like your Cindy's and your Daisies to be able to play early game, but it really has those really good mid-game parts. So it's got your removal like your Strength of Raging Fire or Let the Storm Rage On, and then it's got some of the slightly later game pieces, but those later game pieces tend to just be playing the mid-game stuff and playing multiples of it. Its curve is right in the middle there. So it's got a little bit of stuff to do at the beginning, a lot of stuff to do in the middle, and it peters out towards the end. What does it win to? It wins against aggro. And it wins against aggro because aggro is not fast enough to totally get underneath midrange, and midrange is able to use its effectively costed removal pieces, whether that be characters or songs or actions, to deal with midrange and really kind of like, or deal with aggro and really shut them down and stall them out so that midrange can just kind of push its game forward and win in the end. It loses, obviously, then to control. And the reason for this is because it's not fast enough to get the control over the game before control does, which means that at the control side of things, their stuff is a lot bigger and more impactful in the late game. So if the game is still going on, which it will be for mid-range, it means that mid-range is going to get outclassed by the big impactful plays that control is going to. So that is scissors and rock. Let's go to paper. So paper is our control decks. And what is a control deck? A control deck is a late game deck. So aggro, mid-range, control. And a late game deck is one that really shines in that late game. It takes a while to set up, but once it gets there, it gets control over that board, and it is really difficult to deal with them. They are strong, they are impactful, they get card draw, and they get options. And they look like they make really big brain plays. The reason they make it look like they have really big brain plays is not because they're hard decks to play, and it's not that it takes a genius to play them. Anybody can play control decks. It just takes patience and responding to your opponent, knowing how you want to respond to your opponent so you can get control over the board. Control decks are awesome because you get a lot of card draw, and oh my goodness, do I love card draw. So the strengths of a control deck is it has options. It has card draw. In this case, for Lorcana, it has ramp, and it can get control over the board to be able to really just dominate and do whatever it wants to do in that late game. The weakness is it takes those turns to set up. So if you think about the new Prince Philip Baja control list, for the first several turns, it does nothing. Other than setting itself up and ramping. But as soon as it can get up to that ramp, to the point, the sweet spot in its ramp, it can either play Prince Philip and Malicious, Mean, and Scary and wipe the board, or it can just play characters that are so outclassing their opponent's characters, like the Basil or Clarabelle, that there's not really much of a way to deal with them. Examples, obviously the cow control, because I've just said it is an example. But we also have the Dumbo Blurple list, or if we think back to previous years, we have the Amethyst Ruby Bounce list that was also a control list. Its curve is really kind of low in the early game. It starts to kind of go up towards the mid game, but really has a lot of things that it wants to do in the late game. And the ramp means that you can get there quicker. It wins to mid-range, like I said. It outclasses mid-range and plays better things than mid-range does on the various turns. But it loses to aggro because it has to respond to aggro, and it often can't do so before aggro will win. So that's kind of the basic rock, paper, scissors. Does it mean that if you're playing an aggro deck against a control deck, you're going to win? Absolutely not. You could get bad draws. Your opponent could get good draws. Your opponent could know what to do with a bad draw, whereas you might not, or you might not know what to do with a better draw. There's a lot of variance in these games, and some of it is play draw. Some of it is what's on top of your deck and what you draw, but some of it is also your opponent's. But the basic premise of the rock, paper, scissors is what makes the game feel fun and what makes the game feel fresh and not stale. I promised you a curveball. So there is one last deck here that I haven't talked about, which is combo. So combo does not fit into this nice clean rock, paper, scissors thing because it doesn't care what its opponent's doing. It just wants to show up, and it actually needs an opponent to play the game, but it doesn't actually need the opponent to do anything in particular. It doesn't care what its opponent's doing. Its opponent could do any one of the 3 other strategies, and it just needs to sit there and stall the game to get to its combo. The strengths of a combo deck are that it can go from 0 to 20 in one turn and be completely unpredictable. The weaknesses of a combo deck is that it needs the combo to work. And if it doesn't draw its combo pieces, it just often does nothing. A lot of combo decks don't necessarily have a plan B, or their plan B is weak and it's kind of like just stall the game to be able to get to that combo to be able to just go off and win in one turn. The curve is all over the place. I can't really predict the curve of a combo deck because every combo deck is unique. And examples of this, I guess, are, so I have a magical singing list that I'm trying to make. That would be a combo deck because the combo is gain as much lore with Alma and fantastical magical as possible. Another combo deck is the Monstro Make It Rain combo that we've talked about before, where you can use the We Know the Way combo to just go through your deck, and with Alan and Dale, gain a lore every single time that you do that. Like I said, combo decks are different, are all over the place, but they're great, but they're glass cannons. If they don't do the thing that they want to do, they lose because they didn't get their pieces. So that is the gist of how rock, paper, scissors works when you put them on little pieces of paper, or I guess cardstock, and you put Disney princesses on them to play. I personally am a rock fan? Rock fan, is that what we're calling mid-range? I forgot already. I'm a mid-range fan. Although I do really like aggro, and I can see the appeal for control for sure. But what I really want to do right now is throw that curveball and go put a combo list together. So I'm going to go sleeve up my singing madrigals, and I hope you have fun with whatever rock, paper, scissors that you're going to be playing next.